Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Today is Tuesday, October 8th, 2019. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's baseball playoff games and look ahead to tonight's playoff game, Monday Night Football. I'll look over that game. NHL games from last night, look ahead to tonight's slate. NBA Preseason, WNBA Finals Game 4 tonight. Power rankings for Week 6, as well as guess the lines for the NFL, and my best bet of the day. All right, we're going to start with the baseball playoffs. There were 4 games on the slate yesterday, and all 4 of those series had a chance to end yesterday, and only one of those series did end, which we'll get to in a minute. The Rays defeated the Astros 10-3 to get on the board in the series and keep their season alive. Charlie Morton was excellent in this game. He was better in this game than he was against the A's in the wild card game. He got the win. Zach Greinke got charged with the loss, and he kind of now has a reputation of a bad playoff performer if there wasn't already one before he got traded to Houston. But the funny thing is that the Astros got on the board first in the top of the first on a home run by Jose Altuve to take a 1-0 lead. Bottom of the second, 3-run shot. Kevin Kiermaier made it 3-1 Rays. Bottom of the third, home run. Ji-Man Choi made it 4-1. Bottom of the fourth, Brandon Lau home run, 5-1. 2-run double, Austin Meadows, 7-1 Rays. RBI single, Tommy Pham, 8-1 Rays. So 8 runs for the Rays before the fourth inning was over. Top of the sixth, 2-run single, Yuli Gurriel make it 8-3. Bottom of the sixth, home run, Willy Adames made it 9-3. Bottom of the seventh, sacrifice fly, Travis d'Arnaud made it 10-3. That was your final. Charlie Morton, 5 innings, 3 hits, an earned run, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts. Chaz Rowe, 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 2 runs, and a strikeout. Brendan McKay, 1/3 of an inning, scoreless, only 4 pitches. Oliver Drake, 2 innings, 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 2 strikeouts. And Colin Pache, an inning, no hits, no runs, no walks, and a strikeout. Meanwhile, Houston, Zach Greinke, 3 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 6 runs, a walk, and 5 strikeouts. Hector Rondon didn't even record an out. He gave up a home run. Wade Miley, 2 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, a walk, and a strikeout. Joe Smith, 2/3 of an inning. And Josh James, an inning, 2 hits, no runs, a walk, and a strikeout. So, Game 4 tonight. If the Rays win, Game 5 back in Houston will be Thursday night. If Houston wins, they're off to the ALCS. We'll get more than that game in a minute. Cardinals over the Braves, 5-4 in 10 innings on a walk-off sacrifice fly by Yadier Molina. They force a Game 5. Miles Mikolas gets the win coming out of the bullpen. Julio Teheran gets charged with the loss. Bottom of the first, Paul Goldschmidt home run, 1-0 Cards. Marcell Ozuna home run, back-to-back with Goldschmidt, 2-0 Cards. Top of the third, sacrifice by Ozzie Albies made it 2-1. Bottom of the fourth, Ozuna goes deep again, 3-1 Cardinals. Top of the fifth, Dansby Swanson scores on an error by Matt Carpenter as Adam Duvall is safe on the error by Carpenter to make it 2-3. Then Ozzie Albies home run makes it 4-3 Atlanta. Bottom of the eighth, broken bat RBI single to shallow right for Yadier Molina made it 4-4. And then the bottom of the 10th, Molina's sacrifice fly scores in Colton Wong. Cardinals win it 5-4 to force a Game 5. Dakota Hudson kind of faltered at the end of his start, but that's not his fault because of the Carpenter error. 4 2/3 innings, 5 hits and a run, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. Tyler Webb, 2/3 of an inning, a hit, 2 strikeouts. Giovanni Gallegos, 1/3 of an inning, 2 walks, and a strikeout. John Brebbia, 2/3 of an inning, a hit, and a strikeout. Andrew Miller, 2/3 of an inning, 2 walks, and a strikeout. After Miller, in the 8th inning, came in Ryan Helsley, an inning and 3 strikeouts for him, so that was a good inning. Carlos Martinez, an inning, a hit, no earned runs, no walks, and no strikeouts. The one hit was I think, a double by Josh Donaldson that was in the ninth inning, or it was Acuna. And then he pitched around that, and then Mikolas came in the 10th inning, pitched a scoreless 10th, didn't strike anybody out or walk anybody or give up a hit. And then gave the Cardinals a chance to win it in the bottom of the 10th, in which they did. Meanwhile, Atlanta, Dallas Keuchel 3 and a third innings for it, 3 runs, a walk, 4 strikeouts. Luke Jackson, an inning and a third, a hit, a walk, 3 strikeouts. Darren O'Day, a third of an inning, scoreless. Sean Newcomb pitched a good inning. Josh Tomlin, an inning and a third and a strikeout. Shane Green, an inning and 2/3, 3 hits, an earned run, no walks, 3 strikeouts. Julio Teheran, 2/3 of an inning, a hit, an earned run, a walk. And there's a reason why he's not in the playoff rotation. But the only reason why he's on the roster is because Chris Martin got injured in Game 1. So, Game 5 will be tomorrow, and we're going to pick that game on tomorrow's podcast. Nationals over the Dodgers 6-1 to force a Game 5. A huge win for the Nationals at home with Max Scherzer on the bump. He gets the win. Julio Urias the loss. Top of the first, home run, Justin Turner won out the Dodgers. Nats fans probably thinking, here we go again. Bottom of the third, sacrifice fly, Anthony Rendon, 1-1. Bottom of the fifth, RBI single, Anthony Rendon made it 2-1 Nats. 3-run home run, Ryan Zimmerman, 5-1 Nats, and what could have been its final home game, depends on what happens, obviously, tomorrow. And bottom of the sixth, sacrifice by Anthony Rendon, 6-1 Nats, your final. Finally, Anthony Rendon has a good playoff game after being disappointing the first couple games of the series. Max Scherzer, 7 innings, 4 hits, and a run, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts. He was sensational on short rest, because don't forget, he pitched an inning out of the bullpen on Friday night that helped the Nationals win that game. Sean Doolittle, an inning and a third, no hits, no runs, no walks, no strikeouts. He was pretty solid. And Daniel Hudson, the closer, 2/3 of an inning, a hit, no runs, no walks, and a strikeout. He was good closing that game out. And the Dodgers had some threats there throughout the game, especially later on, but the Nats got the big outs. Rich Hill, 2 2/3 innings, 2 hits and a run, 4 walks, and 2 strikeouts. Wasn't particularly good. Kenta Maeda, an inning and a third, a hit, and 2 strikeouts. Julio Urias, 2/3 of an inning, 3 hits, 3 earned runs. Pedro Baez, a third of an inning, 2 hits, and a run, and a walk. Ross Stripling, an inning, a hit, and earned run, no walks, no strikeouts. Dustin May, 2 innings, a hit, no earned runs, no walks, and a strikeout. And last but not least, a lone team to punch their ticket to the league championship series, the New York Yankees, 5-1 winners over the Minnesota Twins to pull off an impressive sweep as they'll advance on to take on the winner of the Astros-Rays series. I initially was going to pick a Yankee sweep, but Josh Hader blew up in that wild card game for the Brewers. Made me think, I could see a world where one of those Yankee elite relievers blow up and the Twins win a game because of it. But no, that didn't happen. I should have stuck with my original prediction. But it's okay, and the Yankees are moving on. Chad Green gets the win. Jake Odorizzi the loss, and Aroldis Chapman the save. Top of the second, home run, Gleyber Torres, 1-0 Yanks. Top of the third, RBI single, Brett Gardner, 2-0. Top of the seventh, RBI single, Didi Gregorius, 3-0. Bottom of the eighth, home run, Eddie Rosario get the Twins on the board. Top of the ninth, insurance home run, Cameron Maybin, 4-1. RBI single, Didi Gregorius, 5-1. That's your final. Luis Severino, 4 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, 83 pitches. So he was pretty clutch in that game. He actually had the bases loaded, nobody out, and got pop-up, strikeout, swinging, strikeout, looking. And I think that was the biggest sequence of that game, or else maybe the Twins probably have themselves believing, and maybe we're playing Game 4 tonight. So that was a big part of that game, and I have to give Severino credit for that. Tommy Kahnle, 2/3 of an inning, a hit, no runs, no walks, and no strikeouts. Adam Ottavino walked somebody on 4 pitches. I think it was Nelson Cruz, so they pulled him. Didn't look right. Chad Green, an inning and a third, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, and a strikeout. Zach Brandon, an inning and a third, and gave up the home run to Rosario. Aroldis Chapman. And by the way, Brayton got injured in that game, and that's part of why that Chapman pitched an inning and 2/3, gave up a hit, no one runs, a walk, 3 strikeouts. He was his dominant self in this series. Meanwhile, for the Twins, Jake Odorizzi, 5 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts. The closer, Trevor Rogers, 2 innings, 2 hits, and a run, no walks, 2 strikeouts. Sergio Romo, an inning and a third, 2 hits, 2 runs, and a walk, and no strikeouts. And Trevor May, 2/3 of an inning, a hit, no one runs, no walks, and 2 strikeouts. All right, tonight we have the Astros against the Rays. 7 o'clock, Fox Sports 1. Justin Verlander on short rest against opener Diego Castillo. I think the Rays are making a mistake here by going with the opener. I think that it should be Tyler Glasnow on short rest. Because why not? If Houston could do it with Verlander, you could do it with Glasnow. But no, they're not doing that. And I get it. The Rays opener strategy has worked for them the last 2 years. But doing it in the playoff game, in my opinion, is a mistake. And I'm glad the Yankees didn't do that with Chad Green at all in this series. It certainly helped that they probably knew that they had a chance to sweep the Twins, especially once they got to that lead in that game yesterday. But we'll see what happens here. I think that the Rays will obviously be proven to be mistaken about going with Castillo as the opener, and then they'll follow it up with probably a couple innings of Jalen Beeks potentially if he's on the roster. I can see Nick Anderson getting some innings as well here. Emilio Pagan, Colin Pache, like some of their normal arms from their bullpen. Or maybe they do trot out a starter after the opener. Like we've seen that with the Rays before. So, I could be wrong, but I think Houston closes out tonight. Verlander on short rest, I don't think it will be a problem. You just saw Max Scherzer dominate on short rest, but on the flip side, Dallas Keuchel on short rest did not work out for Atlanta. But I think that Verlander's obviously better than Keuchel. Scherzer's on the Verlander level, and he thrived with it for the Nationals. This is a big reason why that series is going to a 5th game. And I think that Verlander gets it done tonight, and they set up the matchup with the Yankees that we all have been kind of inevitably looking forward to probably since March, because that was the popular ALCS pick by everybody before the season. So give me Justin Verlander and the Astros to close out the Tampa Bay Rays tonight. And if it goes to a Game 5, it'll probably be Glasnow against Garrett Cole, which I think is unlikely, but you never know with this sport. Monday Night Football. This game was an absolute dud. The 49ers absolutely thrashed the Browns 31-3. A very impressive win for the Niners. They're 4-0 in the year. Cleveland's 2-3. Jimmy Garoppolo, 20 of 29, 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield was terrible. 8 of 22, 100 yards and 2 interceptions. Yikes. That offensive line was bad. He's clearly regressed from a year ago. We'll get more into football with the teams when I do my power rankings in a couple of minutes. Nick Chubb, 16 carries, 87 yards. Matt Breida, 11 carries, 114 yards and a touchdown. That number's skewed because he had that big 83-yard run early in that game. George Kittle, 6 for 70 and a touchdown. Jarvis Landry, 4 for 75. Odell Beckham Jr., 2 for 27 receiving and 2 for 15 rushing. So that's a little strange. And now, next week, the Seahawks go to the Browns. Situational for the Browns to bounce back. And then the Rams are going to the the 49ers are going to the Rams. And in what is a huge divisional game between those two teams. So we'll talk about more of that as the week goes on. Hockey. Last night, only 2 games on the slate. The Blues defeated the Maple Leafs 3-2. Maple Leafs got charged their first loss of the season. St. Louis is 2-0-1. Toronto 2-1-1. Alex Pietrangelo, number 1 star of the game with the goal. Jordan Binghamton, number 2 star of the game with 32 saves on 34 shots. William Nylander, number 3 star of the game with the goal. So, what could be a Stanley Cup preview goes in the favor of the team that just won the Stanley Cup in the Blues. Blue Jackets over the Sabres 4-3 in overtime for their first win of the season. Overtime goal scored by Alexander Teixeira for the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are now 1-2-0. Buffalo's 2-0-1, so that was the first loss of the season for the Sabres, and it happened to come in overtime. Teixeira was the number 1 star of the game with the OT winner. Number 2 star of the game with the goal and assist, Olivier Bjorkstrand. Number 3 star of the game with the goal and assist, Nick Foligno. Tonight's slate's a little bigger. 7 o'clock, you have the Hurricanes and the Panthers. Hurricanes still undefeated. Panthers are 1-1. Oilers at the Islanders. Oilers undefeated. Islanders are 1-1. Jets at the Penguins. Both of these teams have looked fraudulent at times and exposed, but in other times they've looked pretty good on the offensive side of things. Stars at the Capitals. Stars winless, looking for their first win. Capitals unbeaten in terms of points, so they've received a point in every game. 7:30, nice game in the West. Surprisingly, 2 unbeaten teams have not lost yet. The Ducks and the Red Wings from Detroit. So that's going to be an interesting game all of a sudden. One of those 2 teams that are supposed to be terrible are going to be 3-0. Oh, wait. Yeah, East versus West. Why did I think that Detroit was in the West? Sometimes I get that mixed up, that Detroit's in the East. Maybe because I remember the Ducks and the Red Wings played a 7-game playoff series a few years back when Detroit was still in the West. But yeah, 1 team from the East, 1 team from the West, 2 surprisingly 2-0 teams. Especially, I'd say, the Red Wings, because they won at Nashville, and that's a really good win. And then their other win was against the Stars. Meanwhile, Anaheim beat the Coyotes, and they knocked off San Jose. And those are nice wins, especially the San Jose win, but at Nashville's the best win of those bunch. 8 o'clock NBCSN, those winless Sharks at the Predators. The Predators' second time on NBCSN in this short season so far. I think that Nashville will get a 4-3 OT game in here, and I'm going to say that the Sharks are competitive, will be in this game, high scoring, but I'm going to call Predators win 4-3 OT. Let's say if Philip Forsberg gets the winner. 9 o'clock, Kings at the Flames. Kings 0-1, Flames have a win and a loss. And then 10 o'clock, a very good game, the best game on the board tonight, Bruins at the Golden Knights. Both teams undefeated. The Golden Knights look like the best team in the league. I thought they were the best team in the league before the season, although I did not pick them to win the Stanley Cup, but I did think that they were the best team in the league before the season. And then the Bruins, obviously, one of the contenders in the East that is certainly capable of going back to the Stanley Cup Final. So that's another possible Stanley Cup Final preview, by the way. Bruins at the Golden Knights. So yesterday we had Toronto and St. Louis as a possible Stanley Cup preview, and now tonight we have one possibly with the Bruins and the Golden Knights within the first week of the season. Next up, the WNBA Finals. Tonight is Game 4 between the Mystics and the Sun. 8 o'clock, ESPN2, Ryan Rucco, Rebecca Lobo on the call. This has been an interesting series so far. Elena Delle Donne back from her injury, which is good news for the Mystics. She was grinding it out there on Sunday, and her and her teammates really stepped up their games in Game 3 and got the road win. Courtney Williams has been a breakout player in the playoffs for the Sun, and she really has helped them, along with Alyssa Thomas and Jaquel Jones, so that she's really become like their third wheel on offense. I think this will be a competitive game. I think that the Sun are a team that I think is very capable of forcing a Game 5. But with Delle Donne back on the court and healthy, with the game under her belt after that injury, I think that the Mystics close it out tonight in Game 4. And I had Mystics in 4. So I'm going to stick to that prediction. And your WNBA champions will be the Washington Mystics, and your MVP of the series will be Elena Delle Donne. So give me the Mystics to win tonight. Let's say like 97 to 93. I think it'll be very close. I think that the Sun will have their chances in this game. Won't be surprised if the Sun forces a Game 5 because they're home. And that crowd's going to be behind them at the Mohegan Sun Arena. But ultimately, I think that the Mystics will come away victorious and will be your 2019 WNBA champions. And I have to give props to Jeff Maglicetti. He's going to be on the podcast tomorrow, so I'm going to give him credit. Assuming that the Mystics win, I'm going to give him his due because that was his preseason pick to win the championship. And he was really high on that team before the season. And they really lived up to what he thought they were going to be. And I actually had Delle Donne as my preseason MVP, obviously, but I just didn't think the Mystics were going to be this good. So I'll give Jeff his due when he comes on the podcast tomorrow night. Okay, NBA preseason. We had a couple games last night. The Knicks defeated the Wizards 104-99. RJ Barrett had 17 points. Marcus Morris had 17 in his Knicks debut. Bradley Beal played in this game for the Wizards. Mo Wagner had 16 for Washington. Julius Randle had a nice Knicks debut. So the Knicks overall played well in this game. And obviously, they're favored in this game in the preseason opener. But I don't know if they'll be better than the Washington Wizards in the regular season. Who knows? Maybe Vegas knows more than I do. And normally in the preseason, you see weird lines and in terms of gambling and stuff like that, and injuries and whatnot. But nice performance by the Knicks on the road, getting that win, although it was a meaningless preseason game. And it was good to see RJ Barrett play well, obviously. You want him to play well. He is your rookie, and he's under pressure to play well. The Cavaliers defeated San Lorenzo 120-89. Jordan Clarkson had 17 for Cleveland. C.D. Osman had 12. Kevin Love had only 2 points. Larry Nance Jr. had 15 off the bench. Colin Sexton had 8. So they played a lot of players, the Cavaliers did. First round pick, Dylan Windler didn't play due to a coach's decision. Ante Zizic sat, sore left foot. Matthew Dellavedova had 3, so he had a 3-pointer in that game. Kevin Porter Jr. had 16 for the Cavs off the bench. The Magic defeat the Pistons 115-91, second straight game for the Magic in which they dominated on the road. Aaron Gordon had 25. Christian Wood for Detroit had 19. Jonathan Isaacs had 16. Nick Vucevic had 10 and 10. Blake Griffin had 3. Andre Drummond had 14 and 9. Derrick Rose had 10 off the bench for the Pistons. Pelicans over the Hawks 133-109, and Zion Williamson's debut. Drew Holiday led them in scoring actually with 21. Zion had 16 with 7 boards, so he shot 6 for 13 from the field. So it's funny, him and RJ Barrett had the same field goal. So that's pretty funny that they're both 6 for 13 in their debuts. Except Zion had 16 points and 7 boards, and Barrett had 17 points and 7 boards. So very identical between the number 1 and 3 picks in the draft. Brandon Ingram, 19. Lonzo Ball had 9, 5, and 7. Off the bench, Jahlil Okafor at 11. Nickeil Alexander-Walker at 12. And meanwhile, for Atlanta, Trae Young had 9 points, 11 assists, and 4 boards. DeAndre Bembry had 16. John Collins had 10. DeAndre Hunter had 10. Off the bench, Jabari Parker at 10. Cam Reddish had 11. Alex Len had 14. Bucks over the Bulls, 122 to 112. Robin Lopez, in his returns to the Bulls in the preseason, had 14. Brooke Lopez had 13. They started both Lopez's. That probably won't happen in the regular season. Wesley Matthews had 10. Sterling Brown had 12. So none of their regulars play. No Giannis, no Middleton. But the other eight, Antetokounmpo, Thanasis, had 9 with 10 boards off the bench. And meanwhile, for the Bulls, Lauri Markkanen, 14 points, 5 boards. Chris Dunn, 11 points. Zach LaVine, 16 points, 6 boards, 5 assists. Daniel Gafford off the bench had 12. Kobe White off the bench had 12. Denzel Valentine off the bench had 11. And we already have a final from today. The Raptors over the Rockets, 134 to 129 in China. By the way, the Raptors extended Kyle Lowry 1 year, $31 million. I didn't really talk about that on the podcast, but I'll just talk about it a little bit now. I thought it was a massive overpay, and it was like a thank you after helping the Raptors win the championship. And now you, in my opinion at least, took away a trade piece, because to me, Kyle Lowry is not worth $31 million. To me, I would pay him maybe like $20 million. But that was just very, very strange by the Raptors. 1 year, $31 million. Yikes. And that extension kicks in next season, not this season. James Harden had 34. Russell Westbrook had 13. Clint Capella had 12 with 6 boards. Eric Gordon had 12. PJ Tucker had 0. So the Rockets started all their regulars. Thabo Sefolosha had 10 off the bench. Ben McLemore had 10 off the bench. And Toronto started all the regulars too. Pascal Siakam, 24 points, 11 boards. Serge Ibaka, 18. Fred VanVleet, 16. Norman Powell, 14. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson was addition for them off the bench. He had 7. So, and Kyle Lowry and Marc Gasol didn't even play due to a coach's decision in this game, and the Raptors still got the win in the preseason. Rest of the slate tonight, 7 o'clock, you have the 76ers hosting the Guangzhou Long Lions. 7:30, the Spurs at the Heat. 8 o'clock, ESPN, the Mavericks at the Thunder. I'm interested to see which broadcast teams ESPN is sending out there for their preseason games. Mike Breen was obviously in D.C. last night doing the Knicks, so maybe he gets tonight off. So if I had to guess, you'll probably see Mark Jones do one and Dave Pasch do the other. And I think Jeff Van Gundy will be with Mark Jones on the first one. And the second one, Nuggets with the Trailblazers, I think you'll see Dave Pasch and Doris Burke. And that's Nuggets at the Trailblazers, 10:30 on ESPN. 8 o'clock also, you have the Grizzlies hosting the New Zealand Breakers. And at 10 o'clock, you have the Timberwolves at the Suns. So a couple interesting preseason games on the slate for tonight. Power Rankings NFL week number 6. Just going to talk about every team a little bit. I go from 32 to 1 as I do each and every time I do this. I have 5 quote-unquote cross-off teams, which I think teams are done for the season, whether because it's winless or injuries or whatever. 32 is the Miami Dolphins. They're an obvious cross-off. And the Dolphins, coming off their bye, host the Redskins this week, so they actually have a chance to win on Sunday. 31's the New York Jets are getting Sam Darnold back. They were just horrific offensively against the Eagles and horrific offensively without Sam Darnold. I think Darnold will get some life into that offense eventually once he gets right. I don't know if it'll be right away against the Cowboys, but in the second half of the season, once they play softer defenses like the Giants and the Redskins, I think that they'll be better with Darnold in offense. 30's the Redskins. They're a cross-off team. They just fired Jay Gruden. Bill Callahan takes over as the intern head coach. They play the Dolphins this week, and they have a chance to win their first game, obviously, as do the Dolphins, because they're playing each other. 29th, the Cincinnati Bengals. I have them as a cross-off team. They're winless, and they just came off that win against the Cardinals. Next up for them, they have to go to Baltimore to face the Ravens. 28th, the Arizona Cardinals. They're a cross-off team. They just got their first win of the season. Next up for them, they host the Falcons. 27, I have the New York Giants. To me, this is easily the worst 2-win team in the NFL. They were terrible against the Vikings. So many turnovers in the red zone, but hey, Daniel Jones is a rookie. Sometimes he's going to make mistakes. But at the same time, Jones was going up against one of the best defenses in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings. And what do I say about the Vikings all the time? They beat bad teams and lose to good teams. I say about the Vikings all the time, but we'll talk about the Vikings in a minute. Next up for the Giants, won't get any easier as they have to take on the Patriots in New England. Maybe they're on the cross-off list come next week. 26, the Atlanta Falcons. They probably should be on the cross-off list, but they're not because they have an easy game, potentially, next week as they have to go to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. 25, the Denver Broncos. They got their first win of the season this past week against the Chargers. You know why they're not on the cross-off list? Because they have an easy game at home against the Titans in a game that's winnable for them. 24 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers, just a horrendous loss at home against the Ravens because of the roughing the passer call that cost them the game single-handedly. And Mason Rudolph got concussed, so there were injury reasons to why they lost that game. But that trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick is an outright disaster right now. And it's not for the reasons of bad play or whatnot. It's simply just because that the injuries have built up for the Steelers that are costing them this game, or this season perhaps, including the Rudolph concussion, which cost them this Ravens game, as well as the roughing the passer call. But that trade's going to be a disaster for them. I'm sorry. There's no other way to put around it. This is just terrible by the Steelers. Next up, they're at the Chargers. And why are they not a cross-off? Because I think they are capable of winning at the Chargers. Number 23 is the Tennessee Titans. Bad loss at home against the Bills. Could have won that game. Should have won that game. Next up for them at the Broncos. 22, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They played well against the Panthers, but they ended up losing the game. Next up for them, they host the New Orleans Saints. Number 21 is the Cleveland Browns. Just an outright terrible performance against the 49ers. Next up, home against the Seahawks. Number 20 is the Oakland Raiders, who are coming off the great win in London against the Bears. They have a bye this week, which I think is good for them. Number 19 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They're under 500 on the year after their home loss against Denver. Next up for them, home against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. Surprised that game wasn't flexed out because of the Roethlisberger injury. 18, the Detroit Lions. They are coming off their bye. And on Monday night, they're at Lambeau against the Packers. That is a tough spot for that team. 17, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tough loss at the Saints this past week. Next up for them, London against the Panthers. Number 16 is the Indianapolis Colts. A nice bounce-back win at the Chiefs, but they won that game because Patrick Mahomes wasn't healthy. Let's be honest about that. As well as they played offensively, and as well as they were running the ball and milking clock. But that was more about the Chiefs than it was about them. And the Andy Reid stinker that happens a couple times a year. Next up for Indy, they have a bye. 15, the Buffalo Bills, who won at Tennessee. If you're making the playoffs, if you're the Bills, that's a game you have to win, and they got the job done. Their offense is obviously not very good. Josh Allen obviously coming off that concussion, so he's going to be a little while before he's better. Number 14 is the Chicago Bears. A terrible loss against the Raiders in London. Should have won that game, even though it was Chase Daniel. And they're down 17-0. Their defense, that was just horrendous. Nobody's going to talk about that because everyone's going to blame Chase Daniel. But their defense should not be giving up more than 20 points against a bad Raiders team. And that's a bad look for Khalil Mack. Like, a horrendous look for Khalil Mack that they lost to the Raiders. That's like Odell and the Browns losing to the Giants, and Odell if this was Odell losing to the Giants, you hear nothing but criticism for Odell Beckham Jr., but nobody's talking about Khalil Mack and the fact that he just lost to his former team. Not a peep. And he deserves all the criticism in the world because they laid an egg in London against the Raiders. Very disappointed in the Chicago Bears. 13, the Minnesota Vikings. They lived up to their reputation of beating bad teams and losing to good teams or in prime time as they beat up a bad Giants team. Next up for them, home against the Eagles. 12, the Carolina Panthers. Cam Newton's out again this week as they're going to London to take on the Bucs. This offense and this team has become Christian McCaffrey's, and McCaffrey has turned himself into an MVP candidate. I'd have to give credit to Jeff Burns, who came on the podcast before the season and predicted Christian McCaffrey to win the MVP award. This guy is a special player in the NFL, and I thought this guy was going to be a special player in the NFL, and I had proven to be right. I thought he'd be a better player than Leonard Fournette, and I've been proven right about that as well. And the Panthers, even though they don't have Cam Newton, might make the playoffs without him. So you got to be talking about Cam Newton as a Ewing theory possibility here at the Panthers. Number 11 is the Houston Texans. A rousing win over the Atlanta Falcons, although they stink defensively, the Texans. Next up, they have a really nice game at the Chiefs, in which Patrick Mahomes is not healthy. They can win that game outright in Kansas City on Sunday this upcoming week. Number 10 is the Dallas Cowboys. Very disappointed in their effort at home against the Packers. I thought that they were going to win that game because of no Devontae Adams for the Packers, and it just felt like a spot that they, I think, would come up big in, but they fell flat on their face. Dak Prescott is getting cheaper by the day. Jason Garrett's seat is getting hotter by the day. Next up for them, good opportunity to bounce back against the Jets, in which they're returning their quarterback in Sam Darnold. Number 9 is the Los Angeles Rams. If it wasn't for Greg Zuerlein, they would be 4-1, but they're 3-2, and they host the 49ers this week. 8's the Seahawks, a really nice win against the Rams. Like I said, the only reason why they won that game is because Greg Zuerlein missed a kick. They should be 3-2, but whatever, it is what it is. Seahawks at the Browns on Sunday. 7, Ravens, should be 2-3, courtesy of the refs and Mason Rudolph getting hurt, but they're 3-2. Next up for the Ravens, they have a bye. 6 is the 49ers, coming off that great win against the Browns on Monday Night Football. Next up for them, they have to go to LA to face the Rams in what will be their biggest test of the year. 5's the Philadelphia Eagles. They're the best team in the NFC East right now. They are coming off the win at home over the Jets. Next up for them is at the Vikings. Won't be easy, but a winnable game for them as well. For the Kansas City Chiefs, they drop a few spots because they suffered their first loss of the season, courtesy of Patrick Mahomes being hurt and Andy Reid being fat-ass, lazy Andy Reid in a big spot, in which is why nobody trusts them in the playoffs or in prime time. And the Cowboys have that problem with Jason Garrett as well, as we talked about it earlier. And next up for the Chiefs, they host the Texans and Deshaun Watson, so that's another sexy matchup on paper. 3, the Green Bay Packers. Nice win at Dallas. This team's for real. Next up, they host the Lions on Monday Night Football. 2's the New Orleans Saints. No Drew Brees, no problem, as they go out and beat the Bucs. Their defense is vulnerable, as we saw against the Bucs, but this team is really, really good, and it's going to get better once Drew Brees comes back. He's still better than Teddy Bridgewater, obviously, but Bridgewater has really stepped up, especially this past week against the Bucs. That was his best performance in a Saints uniform, with those couple touchdown passes against the Bucks defense that I think is vanilla and proven to be vanilla all season long. They allowed Daniel Jones to come back against them. They gave up a ton of points to the Rams, and then they gave up a ton of points to the Saints. So I think the Saints are in a good place right now and should win their division. And number one is the New England Patriots. That's going to be the case until either A, they lose a game, or B, Tom Brady gets hurt, or whatever. But I think they're going to be the number one team all season long, barring some random injury. But the funny thing about the Patriots is that the strength of their team is their defense, not their offense. Their offense has been vanilla at times this year against bad teams. Like it was vanilla against the Redskins, for what it's worth. It's been vanilla at times against the Dolphins and it played well against the Jets, but against the Redskins and the Dolphins, that offense was somewhat vanilla at times. And if their offense looks vanilla against the Giants on Thursday night without Saquon Barkley, then you're going to be hearing some whispers of, Tom Brady may not be that great anymore, yada, yada. You're going to hear like those whispers. Well, I should say against the Giants defense. Well, the Giants offense will have Saquon Barkley, but if the Giants offense does well against the Pats defense, which has been great all year, especially without Saquon Barkley, then people are going to be whispering about the Pats defense being a little overrated. But I think they should be fine on Thursday night. We'll pick the game on Thursday's podcast, obviously. And now, guess the lines, week number 7 in the NFL. I'm sure some of the lines have moved since I looked at the lines. First up, you have the Giants at the Patriots. I guessed this game to be Patriots by 18.5. I think it should be that because Saquon Barkley won't play for the Giants, and flat out the Patriots are better than the Giants. And it's 16.5. If Barkley was there, it'd be 15 because Saquon Barkley is worth 1.5 to the point spread, according to some professional gamblers I know. So, if Barkley was healthy and playing, this would be 15. And obviously, Barkley's the most valuable running back against the spread in the league. Panthers at the Bucks from London. I have the Panthers by 4.5. It's Panthers by 2. And it was actually a pick'em at one point, but the Panthers should be favored in this spot because they're just simply better right now, in my mind at least. The Seahawks against the Browns. I'm going to say that the Browns, despite that pitiful effort at home, or at the Niners on Monday Night Football, will be favored by 1 point over the Seattle Seahawks. And Seattle is actually favored by 1 now. And you know why that's the case? Because the Browns looked like dog shit last night against the Niners, so now the Seahawks are actually favored at the Browns. Next up, the Texans at the Chiefs. I'm going to change this pick because I forgot that Mahomes isn't healthy. I'm going to say that the Chiefs are 4-point favorites at home against the Houston Texans, and it's 5.5. I think that's high with Mahomes not being 100%. So I think that's the wrong line in that game. Next up, the Redskins at the Dolphins. I have the Redskins by 6.5. Well, I said that because I just quite frankly think that the Dolphins are tanking and shouldn't even be less than 6-point underdogs against anybody. And Washington is laying 3.5. So that's a short line. Eagles at the Vikings. I have Minnesota by 2.5. And Minnie is favored by 3. Saints at the Jaguars. I have Gardner Minshew and company laying 1.5 at home. And they're favored by 1. Do I think they deserve to be favored here? Yes. And I'm just not a believer in Teddy Bridgewater still, despite him playing pretty well last week. And, by the way, they're on the road, not at home. Next up, the Bengals at the Ravens. I have Ravens by 12.5. And it's Ravens by 11.5, so 1 point off. 49ers at the Rams. I guess the Rams by 4.5. The Rams are favored by 3.5 after that impressive game by the Niners. The line moved a little bit in favor of the Niners. The Falcons at the Cardinals. I have the Falcons by 1, and it is the Falcons by 2.5. So Falcons road favorites at the Cardinals. The Titans at the Broncos. I have the Broncos by 4.5, and it's the Broncos by 2.5. The Cowboys at the Jets. I have Dallas by 8.5, and it's Dallas by 8.5, so that was my first correct pick on the podcast. Steelers at the Chargers. I have the Chargers by 4. It's Chargers by 6.5. I think that's high. And on Monday Night Football, the Lions at the Packers. I have the Packers by 7, and it is Packers by 5. I think that line is extremely low because I'm not a huge Lions believer, but I guess the public is. Best bet of the day brought to you by DraftKings. So we only really have one game on that's important tonight in baseball, but don't forget we also have a thing called hockey going too. So we're going to parlay the Houston Astros with a couple of hockey teams I like tonight. So we'll go to the NHL slate. Let's take the Penguins at home against the Jets, the Islanders at home against the Oilers, the Preds at home against the Sharks, the Flames at home against the Kings. I think it's a lock. So that's $7.53. Wagering $1, payout is $8.53. That's it for the podcast today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping baseball playoffs and the hockey, NBA preseason, WNBA finals. Jeff Maglicetti on tomorrow night. We'll do NHL power rankings, and I'll have my best bet for you as well as anything else that happens in the world of sports. Hope you guys have a great day, everybody.